The wind howled across Dust Valley as the sun sank behind the western ridges, painting the world in blood-red light. The town of Coyote Hollow was small. One street, one saloon, one church, and one preacher, whose voice could thunder louder than any storm. But that night, the only sound louder than the wind was fear itself. The preacher's daughter, Lydia Grace, sat by the window of their wooden house, her fingers trembling around a small Bible. She was 16, full of quiet kindness and curiosity, but tonight her thoughts were heavy. Her father had ridden out early that morning to settle a feud between ranchers and hadn't returned. Rumors said a gang had moved in, the Black Vultures, men who stole cattle, burned homes, and shot without warning. Lydia's heart beat fast as she stared at the dark horizon, praying he'd come back. Then came the thunder of hooves. Out of the swirling dust, two massive figures appeared. The Holloway twins, Clay and Colt. Men so tall and broad they looked carved from canyon walls. Folks called them the giant cowboys. They worked the land, rode hard, and fought harder when trouble found them. Both had lived long enough to learn that sometimes justice didn't wear a badge. They dismounted in front of the preacher's house, their boots crunching on gravel. "Evening, Miss Lydia," Clay said, removing his hat. His voice was deep but kind. "Heard your pa ain't home yet." Lydia rose from the chair, clutching her shawl. "No, sir. I've been waiting since sundown." Colt's gray eyes scanned the hills. "There's talk in town the vultures are headed this way. We came to make sure you're safe." Lydia tried to smile, but the sound of distant gunfire cut through the air like lightning. The twins exchanged glances. They didn't need words. Trouble had arrived. They moved fast. Colt checked his rifle while Clay bolted the doors. The air thickened with dust and fear. From outside came the rumble of riders. 6 shadows circling the preacher's house, laughing, shouting, firing into the sky. A voice called out, rough and taunting. "Where's the preacher, little girl? Time he learned not to meddle in grown men's affairs." Lydia flinched, but Clay stood firm by the window. "Stay back from the door," he told her. Colt looked at his brother. "We ain't got enough bullets for a siege." Clay's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make our own kind of miracle." With that, the twins stepped onto the porch, rifles in hand, framed by the glow of lantern light. The gang's laughter turned to silence. The Holloway brothers were legends, men you didn't cross unless you had a death wish. "What's it gonna be, boys?" Clay shouted. "You ride back to your hole, or we send you there ourselves." The gang leader spat into the dirt. "We ain't scared of you, Holloway." "Then you're too dumb to be scared," Colt muttered, cocking his rifle. The night erupted. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Sparks flew from rifle barrels. Lydia screamed as splinters burst from the wooden door. Clay returned fire, hitting one rider clean off his horse. Colt moved like a shadow, every shot steady, every motion silent and sure. But the vultures kept coming. They threw torches, flames licking the dry grass around the porch. Smoke rose, choking the air. Lydia grabbed a bucket and ran to the well, ignoring Clay's shout for her to stay inside. Her courage burned brighter than the fire. She stumbled, nearly dropping the bucket when Colt appeared beside her. "Get back, Miss Lydia," he ordered. "I won't hide while they burn my home." She cried. For a moment, Colt saw the same fierce spark in her eyes that he and Clay once saw in their own mothers, back when the world was cruel and they had nothing but each other. He nodded once. "Then let's finish this." Together they fought the flames, while Clay covered them, picking off the riders one by one. Smoke and sweat filled the air until finally silence fell. The last vulture turned and fled into the dark, his torch dropping uselessly in the dust. The battle was over. The ground was littered with burning embers and echoes of gunfire. Lydia's face was streaked with soot, her hands trembling, but her eyes were full of gratitude and awe. Clay holstered his rifle and looked at his brother. "You all right?" Colt nodded. "Been worse. Could use a drink, though." Lydia laughed softly, the sound shaky but real. "I can make coffee," she offered. As they stepped inside, the house smelled of smoke and salvation. Lydia poured them cups, with hands that had just learned bravery. The twins sat, weary and silent, their shadows flickering in lantern light. "You didn't have to come," Lydia whispered. Clay smiled faintly. Ma raised us to protect good folks. You're one of them. Outside, the night had turned calm again. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang, slow, solemn like a prayer for peace. Then came the distant sound of hooves, but this time it wasn't danger. The preacher rode into sight, weary but alive. When he saw the twins on his porch and the bullet holes in his house, he dropped from his horse in disbelief. What in God's name happened here? He gasped. Lydia ran to him, tears finally breaking free. Pa, the vultures came, but Clay and Colt saved us. The preacher turned to the twins, his eyes full of gratitude. You boys are angels in the shape of men, Colt chuckled softly. We ain't no angels, sir, just men who don't like bullies. As dawn broke over Dust Valley, the light spilled across the town, touching every scar and every hope left standing. The preacher's bell tolled again, this time for victory. Lydia stood on the porch, watching the Holloway twins ride off into the rising sun, their long shadows stretching across the earth. Will I ever see you again? She called. Clay looked back, tipping his hat. If trouble finds you, Miss Lydia, you can bet we'll find trouble first. And with that they rode west into legend.